I'll tell you straight, this whole mess started because one woman with a clipboard thought my grandfather's pond belonged to her yoga club. I've lived on this land my entire life, 170 acres of sun-baked Texas dirt barns that creak like old men, and a spring-fed pond carved out by my granddad, back when folks still hauled water in tin buckets. To me, it's not scenery, it's bloodline. That's why when a stranger in designer boots walked up my gravel drive asking if I was the caretaker, I knew trouble was already brewing. She introduced herself like she was royalty, Claire Saunders, president of the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association, flashing a realtor smile and clutching a tablet like it held the 10 Commandments. She said my pond fell within the visual corridor of their fancy new walking trail. Then without blinking, she asked if I'd take down my fence so her residents could use it for kayaking and light swimming. I nearly spit out my coffee. I told her plain, ma'am, this pond's been in my family since 1928, and nobody sets foot in that water unless I say so. Her lips pinched like I'd kicked her puppy. She muttered something about shared community resources and marched off. I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, I got a letter in the mail that looked like it belonged on a judge's desk, embossed logo expensive paper, the works. It claimed my fence was environmentally disruptive and that I was blocking access to a communal landmark. They even included a list of corrective actions: remove the fence, build a public footpath, and show up at their next board meeting. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Then I scanned it and sent it to my lawyer, Rebecca Lane, a property rights bulldog, who once made a county commissioner cry in court. She called me back within 10 minutes. "This is garbage. Post a cease and desist at your trailhead and let me handle the paperwork." I could almost hear her sharpening her legal knives. But Claire didn't back down. Soon her little army of clipboard warriors was wandering around my fence line, wearing vests with HOA patches, stitched on like they were federal agents. I walked out with my shotgun resting in the crook of my arm, not loaded, just persuasive. One of them stammered about wildlife passage corridors. I pointed at the no trespassing sign that had been there since before their subdivision existed and told them to move along. That night, another letter arrived, this one with blurry maps that magically stretched their HOA boundaries into my pasture like a drunk toddler with crayons. That's when things stopped being funny. Next thing I know, 2 deputies are pounding on my door at dawn saying the HOA filed a complaint claiming my pond had been reclassified as community property. I stood there barefoot, coffee in hand, and asked if they were joking. They weren't. But when I laid out my arsenal of deeds, water rights, and federal patents across the porch rail, the deputies whistled low and said, "Yeah, you're solid." They left embarrassed while Claire sat in her SUV down the road, watching with her sunglasses on like some suburban sniper. Not even a day later, I started finding tire tracks by the pond. First a kayak left behind, then chip bags and beer cans. One Saturday, I looked out and saw 7 cars parked along the easement families, setting up like it was a holiday picnic. Kids splashing in the pond, a guy dragging a canoe, music blaring. When I told one of them to pack it up, he waved his phone at me and said, "Claire posted in the HOA group, it's our community lake now." That was the moment I realized this wasn't ignorance, it was entitlement. The sheriff's office shrugged, said it was a gray area, so I went higher. I sent photos, deeds, and security footage to an old contact of mine, Miguel Torres from the Bureau of Land Management. Back when I worked water projects, Miguel was the guy who could quote land statutes in his sleep. He took one look and said, "This isn't just trespass. This is fraud. Sit tight. We're sending people." And sure enough, 3 days later, a convoy of government SUVs rolled up. Agents in khakis and ball caps walked the pond, tested soil, photographed a trampled turtle nest, and interviewed me for nearly an hour. When they were done, Agent Torres handed me a thick report. You have full federal water rights. The HOA has zero jurisdiction, but Claire and her board just stepped into felony territory. They submitted forged maps to the county. When word got back to Claire, she didn't retreat, she doubled down. The next morning, I woke to chanting drums and the smell of sage. I stepped onto my porch to see tents pitched along the pond, a wooden sign declaring Sacred Waters Community Zone, and Claire with a megaphone preaching about ancestral rights. One woman was doing Tai Chi by the water, while some guy played harmonica to the fish. I swear I thought I was watching a cult documentary. I recorded everything and called Torres again. Within hours, federal officers and a state marshal showed up. They didn't yell, didn't threaten. They just wrote ticket after ticket, trespass, environmental interference, child endangerment. Even unauthorized burning during fire season. Claire tried to argue, waving her arms and screaming about freedom of association, but the marshal just stared her down and said, "This is not public land. You're finished." And that's when the agents revealed the kicker. They had proof Claire forged county filings altering my property lines by nearly 200 feet. That's a felony, plain and simple. The fallout was swift. Claire was served at her own driveway, ranting on her phone, until the marshal calmly told her any social media posts could be used against her. Her HOA board started dropping like flies. Treasurer resigned, secretary vanished. Even their drone oversight guy quit. Local news ran headlines, HOA president faces felony land grab charges. Their website went dark. Meanwhile, the state agricultural board expanded my conservation protections and even funded new fencing. My lawyer filed a civil suit so thick it could have been used as a doorstop, trespass, defamation, habitat destruction, you name it. Claire tried to crowdfund her defense with a campaign called Protect Our Pond Rights, but she barely scraped $600. By the time we went to court, it wasn't even a fight. The judge didn't let her finish her speech. She cut her off with, "Ma'am, unless you've got a constitutional argument stronger than the Department of the Interior, sit down." Verdict: full recognition of my ownership. HOA dissolved. Claire found personally liable restitution set at $2.1 million. And the kicker, she got 9 years in prison for document forgery and obstruction. I used half that money to restore the shoreline and rebuild my grandfather's barn. The rest went into solar irrigation. The subdivision stripped down their pretentious street names, families quietly moved out, and a few came by to apologize. One guy even brought me wine and asked how to rezone his land away from HOA control. For the first time in months, the pond was quiet again. A month later, I stood at a landowner summit telling folks what I'd learned. I told them this: you don't just own land, you guard it. You remember who walked it before you, and when someone tries to turn your home into a playground brochure, you weld the gate shut and fight back. These days, when I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee, the pond reflects nothing but trees, sky, and peace. And right above the turtle nest hangs a custom sign, bright red letters, private property. Trespassing will not be tolerated. Never again. So tell me, what do you think? Was Claire just drunk on power, or did the HOA truly believe they could rewrite the law? Drop your thoughts down below. I want to hear where you stand on property rights, community greed, and how far you'd go to defend your home. And if you've ever had your own HOA nightmare, share it. I'll be reading.